Hello everyone, and thank you for joining today's session on why GPO authority and AP evolution depend on visibility in collaboration with Springtime Technologies. To quickly introduce myself, my name's Beth. I'm an editor and digital content manager here at SSON, and I'll be moderating the session today. However, as always, we do have some housekeeping to go through before I hand over for the main session. Firstly, this session is being recorded and you will have access to the session after the event. However, to interact live, there are a few tools to note. Firstly, we have the Q&A function for you to pose questions to our speakers, and we always encourage you to do so as we do reserve time at the end of our webinars for an audience Q&A. However, any unanswered questions will be addressed post-webinar via written responses, so not to worry, we don't do unanswered Q&A questions at SSON. Next, we have the attendee chat where you can leave comments. Also, if you have any technical issues, please feel free to use this chat to let myself and my colleagues know, and we'll do our very best to help you out. It's not easy presenting online, especially when you can't see the audience. So we've also included the reaction tab where you can send emojis such as a thumbs up or a smiley face. So please do make use of those, as I know you usually do in our webinars, as we love to see how you're receiving the session. And finally, we have our resources tab on the bottom right of the screen with some great additional resources from our speakers, the sponsor and the SSO network. You can also learn more about our speakers and connect with them on LinkedIn through this tab. So to support today's session, we do have a copy of today's slides for you all, as well as a link to the recent SSON and Springtime Essentials report on breaking the KPI ceiling, how AI is redefining AP productivity. So without further ado, I will introduce our speakers for today, starting with Dan French, who is the founder and CEO of Consider Solutions, serving global brands including BT, Sony Music, Starbucks and UNICEF. With a focus on finance and accounting, procurement and shared global business services, Dan advises on governance and optimization of global end-to-end business processes, data-driven decision-making, operating models, business partnering, organization and roles, performance management, technology, managing risk, and simplifying compliance. Dan has a background of 25 years in strategy, operations, general management, consulting, performance improvement, risk management and compliance, process change, and technology in global businesses. Next, we're joined by Stephen Standring, who is the fractional CRO at Springtime Technologies. And Steve has spent the last 25 years as the CRO in companies in the P2P world, from early stage through to mature. 5 of these successfully exited for over $100 million, and 1 achieved unicorn status. As CRO, he has defined and driven the whole go-to-market strategy, including building elite without being elitist, sales teams, sales support, and proactive, focused marketing. All of these companies became early market leaders due to their sharp focus and GTM effectiveness. His focus is on client success and adding value to clients and partners in every interaction. Steve also spent 5 years consulting to and supporting the shared services market with advice around branding, leadership, customer satisfaction, contracting suppliers, and making sure they deliver. Next, we're joined by Aleksander Hajdas, who is a seasoned finance transformation leader with over 15 years of experience driving global process excellence and compliance in accounts payable. He has held key GPO roles at high-profile companies such as JTI, Avon, Coty, and Oriflame, where he led end-to-end procure-to-pay transformations. Alex specialises in AP automation, operational efficiency and governance frameworks that support scalable, compliant finance operations across multinational environments. And finally, we're joined by Jasna Janjik, who is the solutions architect at Springtime Technology, who will show us what visibility looks like in the real world in a little later in the session. So that's enough from me, so I will hand over to our lovely speakers.
Good afternoon, everybody. So agenda today this is a focus for all of you GPOs out there. We're going to start off with a little look at the modern role of the GPO with Dan, and then we'll go into a bit more of a deep dive in how visibility actually transforms the GPO role with Alex. Then we'll look at some visibility in action, look at why AP automation and the platform effect is fundamental to getting visibility and driving real customer outcomes. And we'll very quickly go through that. And that's really to cover, it's all very well talking about things that give you more visibility and automation, but you need to know what outcomes that gives you from a business perspective. And hopefully that will leave us some time for some questions and answers. Just to start with, I just wanted to spend 2 minutes on mentioning Springtime, because probably none of you have ever heard of Springtime Technologies. They've been around for 15 years and are focused on AP automation. And as a strange company, for the first 15 years, they had no sales and no marketing. So all of their business has been done through referral, which has meant that they're extremely customer focused. And it means that they've had some fantastic outcomes. This is just to give us a little bit of credibility before we start this piece, which is a thought leadership thing today. This is a list of some of the clients that you will no doubt know the names of, rather better than you do Springtime. All of these clients put 100% of their invoice volumes through the Springtime Technologies solution, which is called Invoice Track. And we're focusing on making sure that you get significantly high touchless process volumes. Some of this is going to be dependent on having real visibility of processes, which is what we're going to focus on today. So without further ado, I shall pass you on to Dan. Extremely flattering picture of him, I may add.
We need to see any more of that?
Moving on then.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. So we're talking about the global process owner and visibility, and it's kind of important to recognize the context of the end-to-end process. And what you see here is a full cycle. And of course, none of us actually own this full cycle, but this is definitely the piece we need to worry about. And what you will see now is a little bit of a highlight. The highlight here on the right, when we're in GBS or shared services or AP, you see a lot of the challenges and a lot of the issues, but you see them at this point. But moving on, you'll see all these issues are caused to the left. And we know this well. This is why it's so important to take an end-to-end view, even if we don't have end-to-end responsibility. And moving on, obviously, not all of those are transactional related issues. Vendor master data is key to it. So master data is absolutely central. So that's just kind of a bit of context. Really, to be an effective GPO, as we look at this next picture, you really need to have a dual operating model. In whatever way you operate, in a GBS or shared services or in finance operations, the services you deliver are very niche. They're either in settlement or accounts payable, or maybe some of you do some support in the PO process. But those are only silos in the end-to-end. We've got to have a view of the end-to-end business cycle. And this is what we call this dual operating model, having an outside-in view as well as an inside-out view. So then that leads us to the question, how do we earn the right to get that end-to-end view? And a lot of GPOs talk to me about the fact they appreciate the need to be end-to-end, but they say, I don't really have the knowledge about the far left of it or the far right of it. And the key point is not to be the smartest person in the room or claim to know everything. It's earning the right to have that conversation. And I love this equation by Charles Green. He wrote a book called The Trusted Advisor, and he's the only person I've ever known who's managed to be able to assert what trust actually is. And he uses this as an equation that's a combination of credibility. Do you know what you're doing? Reliability. Do you do what you say and say what you do? Rapport, intimacy, divided by self-interest, as in people aren't interested in other people who are only interested in themselves. But the critical piece here is visibility on the end-to-end process is what helps with credibility. So it all ties together on the visibility discussion. So the GPO, ownership is an unfortunate word. We are we all agree that accountability is important, but ownership means more than that, and it's unhelpful. So we talk a lot about orchestration, the global process orchestrator. And this is just a useful model to think about how we operate in the end-to-end process. And now just thinking, a great mantra, if you like, for a GPO is to think like a CFO. So everything we do should be helping drive financial resilience, driving profitable growth of the company, and increasing operational efficiency. And if we think like that, all of the decisions get a lot easier. And ultimately, this visibility discussion means we need to have visibility at the kind of ground level, zooming in, if you see on the left-hand side there, and visibility if you zoom out the big picture. So this is a job that requires not just high IQ, we need high EQ to be able to do all that and to be able to operate well. And then finally, it's all down to engaging who? Your stakeholders. And with that, I'll pass over to Alex.
Wait.
Hi, everyone. Skip my picture. Hi, everyone. So we've heard what Dan had shared from a theory, and then how he implements this in practice. And I just wanted to give you an example from my past, the experience that I had, exactly how visibility helped me to get credibility, to build my role as a GPO, to expand that role, and also to support a little bit the GBS that we have created at that time. And to do that, I'll just set a little bit the scene. So where we have started and where the systems were, that the process was very, very fragmented. You know, the cycle times were far beyond any benchmarks. We didn't really understand where the processes are failing. We were just receiving this constant subjective feedback that our suppliers are unhappy. That of course trickles to the upstream procurement teams, and then doesn't make us as credible as a partner to organization to drive further value. GBS was only perceived as sort of operational backbone with a very, very limited scope. So it was purely reactive of what we where we were. And of course there was a lot of debates, what can we do? And one of the things that we decided to do at this point is exactly to start understanding where our processes are, what needs to be done, and set some baseline for us to start understanding where we are, what is really happening in the processing, and to have this source for further improvement. So as you might imagine, as a sort of step number one, we started to gather the data. As you might, some of you or most of you are often facing, you have different ERPs, different systems that you need to put and consolidate the data. The extract is very time consuming, very manual, if you don't have the right solution to do that. And that was our case. We had, obviously issues around quality of the data, so we had to enrich the data once it was extracted. So it was all in all very, very slow, and often, once we were building some of our insights, it often became simply outdated. So it took us, several weeks to pull the data, and then by the time we had some insights, it might have already been too late. So that was our focus. Our focus really was to build that constant and a way to extract our data, to define what are the dashboards, what are the key metrics that we want to focus, and not even define, but really understand what is even possible for us to extract. As we saw that one of our key issues is around paid on time. And of course, that was creating this whole noise around the organization. That was one of our key metrics that we wanted to focus, and not only to create those dashboards that have a percentage and you understand how many times you're failing as a supplier to pay on time, but really what are those key insights behind that numbers. So and that's why it's such a laborious exercise, is not only to get the data, but really what sits behind. So we created a sort of an insights dashboard where we try to break down exactly the reasons behind those failed instances of paid on time, and try to segregate and understand where those problems really lie. So really build an insights into that whole dashboard to really be able to drive further change. And this is what we really brought up first within our GBS governance. So this is the outcomes. These are the issues that we have, and we started to identify who can own some of those issues. And as you might imagine, in accounts payable, it's often you receive a lot of inconsistencies in the process that are happening upstream. So our key stakeholder that we really wanted to have was within procurement, the procurement team, and that they were owning the processes. And of course, initially when we come and we ask for the time, we ask for attention, it's the typical attitude of, that's not really something that I really am bothered with. You as GBS, you solve your problems. But the more we create the story and we are able to build on factual data, where are those shortcomings coming from? Whether it's the quality on the purchase order, or we are receiving invoices already that on arrival, so they already past due. So that breakdown and that storyboarding, creating that impact behind that story, helped us to gradually bring our procurement team on board and get their attention and really deep dive into those key metrics, key failures, and create that close sponsorship between the GBS, finance, and the procurement organization. We had ultimately managed to have our CPO as a chair for the whole initiative, because we of course we assigned the right people to the right let's say failure buckets of the paid on time or other metrics that we were not able to perform as we would want to have. And then of course we had joint teams that were working on further improvements. So we had those dashboards, we had the insight, we finally had the buy-in from the upstream, and we were able to create a plan or initiative that we are hoping is going to improve the overall process, and then ultimately, of course, is going to improve the how those subjective opinions of how we perform are going to be slowly and gradually changed with everything that we have prepared. And of course, that means that we had to create a sort of race between the teams, make sure that everyone understands what is their role. We set those teams between different in IP, in IT, in GBS, and procurement. And then, of course, we establish a certain governance to make sure that everything gets delivered. So without governance, a lot of things are not getting delivered. So we made sure that, of course, behind those initiatives, there is a certain cadence of meetings. And then all of those improvements are being then reported to the head of GBS and the procurement officer within the company. What it really helped us with, I mean, ultimately, of course, some of the outcomes and key insights is that we were able to establish the dashboards that everyone really understands. That's something that you can share across the key stakeholders for them to be able to take the right insights and the things that they want to see. Overall, of course, through the improvement that we have done, there are some efficiencies, there are cycle times that were improved. But I think most importantly, some of the outcomes that we managed to achieve is really break those silos that you often see between GBS or back office that you have and the business functions. They really understood where we are coming from, how the issues that we live day to day are impacting ultimately also their ability to be successful in what they do. And then ultimately, I think one of the major change for me as a GPO and for the organization as GBS was that we, at least in the perception of our procurement colleagues and the CPO, we were no longer perceived as a back office operational. We started to be perceived as a partner, and we started to be perceived as an organization that can deliver value. And this is where we actually were able to scale further GBS. The scope of the GPO role was extended from the typical P2P also into sourcing. We started to have tail and spend management in the process. This was a new extension into GBS. And of course, this is something where you exactly stop becoming just a volume per FTE organization, you start delivering value, you start driving back the savings back into the organizations, that it was really ultimately also appreciated by our CPO. And of course, this was just a foundation for further expansion based on those outcomes that we really built out of scratch, very, very manually. So from my perspective, I think that's the key takeaways from this exercise, and how we have built that new perception and those new scope and everything that we were able to drive out of GBS based on this is really understanding, because of course we took a lot of different paths which had dead ends. So really understanding quickly what you can actually measure and you can do it consistently is really a key. If we are not able to consistently provide the feedback around certain areas, of course you are not able to ultimately deliver the change, because you don't know if you're progressing, if you're not. And of course, based on when you start getting those insights, it's really selling. I mean, a GPO role is very much a sales person internally, where you need to sell your idea, and so creating the story, getting your stakeholders on board fairly early, based on those facts that you are able to pull from the data, is something that of course is going to drive your life much easier. Where we really struggled at some point is because it was a very manual process to take the data, build the insights. Like I mentioned before, first of all, some of the insights we were identifying late, so we were not able to act on them instantly. And most importantly, it was very difficult to sustain that level of engagement, that level of effort for a longer period of time. So definitely looking for a solution that supports you in getting those insights, preferably instantly, is going to make the journey much shorter, and you will be able to get to the outcomes much faster. So that's very briefly our case, and I think I'll now pass on back to Steve.
Thank you, Alex. So we're going to show you a little bit about what visibility can look like, really a real-time instant example of the things that Alex had to build rather painfully. But just before we do that, I want to talk very quickly about how you justify doing this, right? Because we're going to show you visibility, which allows you to really focus your time and attention where you should prioritize it. The underlying technology that we use to provide this is called Invoice Track, and it's a platform that automates accounts payable, basically. So the accounts payable pieces we're not going to be showing you today, because we're here to look at visibility. But what the visibility ultimately does is it gives you the ammunition to start improving your processes and automate. And we all have efficiency goals in shared services and GBS, and the efficiency goals come from automation. So how the solution works is it ingests invoices of any type, whether you need e-invoice mandated invoice coming in, or whether it's PDFs that are data captured. It doesn't really matter. We'll handle all of that for you. Once it gets onto the platform, we extract the data, we do all of the matching, whether that's a 2, 3, or 4-way match. We will even be able to match against your contracts to make sure that your invoice payment terms are in sync with your contracts. It is amazing how much money is left on the table there. And then we manage all of the cost and tax accounting automatically by either integrating into your tax system or by providing it ourselves. And then we also have a kind of a quality gate there, which makes sure that we're looking at trends and all the rest of it. So if you have a supplier that's invoiced you 1,000 times at 200 euros and they suddenly produce one of 10,000, we would want to highlight that as a trend that looks a little bit suspicious. All of the workflow to gain approvals, either for goods received notes or for non-PO based invoices are built into the system. And the idea here is that your accounts payable folks only see exceptions and a very small number of them, and they all look the same. But as I said, we're not going to go through what that looks like today. The reason for me just articulating this is because it is in sync where visibility comes from. The other thing is, I think traditionally consultants, I should have to ask Dan if this is if he might have a different point of view from me on this one. It used to be that consultants would say, look at your processes before you automate. Don't automate a bad process. I think we've probably all seen RPA perhaps prove that as a case in point. However, with a platform like this, because everything goes through the platform on day one, the visibility that you get actually highlights where you need to improve your processes automatically. So keep it in mind, see what you think. I would contend that this means that you can automate before you actually improve your processes. But I'm sure I'd be interested to see what everybody's views are by the end. Right, I'm clicking. There we go. Oh, Microsoft is trying to edge in on the presentation and see itself heard. Okay, we might just restart the PowerPoint here. We're going through at a decent pace, though. I think as I go through the visibility stuff as well, have a thought about what Alex was saying. The GPO role is one where you have to win hearts and minds in order to create change in a meaningful way. And hearts and minds is a kind of a sales process. It's a process of change. And those hearts and minds need evidence to be able to shift the way that they want to work. And evidence comes from visibility. So visibility is a core asset of GPOs. And not only does it mean that you can then start justifying your transformation and change projects, but as Alex explained, it often means that you can expand the scope of what you're doing upstream and downstream as is necessary. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move over to Jasna, and she's going to give you some examples or an indication of what visibility can look like. And I can tell you that the demo is going to be more reliable than PowerPoint today. So let me pass over to Jasna, and she's going to show you exactly the components of visibility. And this is designed to support GPOs specifically, but it also is the one place of truth that will give your business all of the KPIs it needs to know about, so you can see where your productivity increases go. And again, that's a drive towards hearts and minds and transformation.
Yeah, so as mentioned already before by Alex and by Steve, we are not only processing the invoices, but we also have all the transactional data, like the purchase order data. We have all the master data in the system, and that's why we can also have a very good reporting on it, and also considering all the processes and not really just the invoice process itself. One report, for example, is the workflow. So here I see all the workflows, so basically the process mining, but on top I see where my team is spending most of their time. For example, here I see that for 4% of all incoming documents, my accounts payable team needs 10% of their whole time. And I can even drill down to it on field level. So here I see then on top in which field accounts payable is spending most of their time. For example, here I see that accounts payable is spending 23 days to manually insert some comments and notes to documents. And then I can start working on this process to fix the process, adapt it, and automate it in the future. Another report is, for example, the management report, where we see some important KPIs, like, for example, the total documents, the PO rate, the purchase order rate, the invoice rate, and also the touchless rate overall. But I see also a comparison with the best in class touchless rate. So I see like what is the best-in-class touchless rate for specific countries, and then I can start focus on the countries where I'm very far away from the best-in-class, and to get here the processes fixed as soon as possible. Another report, for example, is the payment and dunning report. So here I can see the documents which are paid late, and that's maybe because they have been received late, or the payment run was done late, or they were overdue because the business user took a long of time for processing the documents. But this is more focusing on the past, so what happened and why they have been paid late. But on top, we have also a prediction. So here you can see which documents are running into risk to be paid paid late, because we know from the past that usually processing or the approval for a specific kind of documents or from a specific vendor takes several days. And if we do not hurry up here the process or reach out to the business to approve the documents earlier, we will run into the risk to pay this document late. Another report, for example, is also this invoices per EP FTE. So here I can really see how many documents are processed on country level and also on FTE level. So I really see the improvement the tool has bring to me. So I can also see how many documents have been processed before the tool was implemented, and how many FTEs I need after the tool was implemented. Hand it back to.
Only if you can get the PowerPoint going
yes,
again.
1 second. Hopefully Microsoft is now deciding to work again.
So those are just some examples of what visibility can do. But obviously this support that goes to the left, as Dan would say, the upstream component of your process, you know, this is the area where you can ensure that you're getting your discounts from your suppliers based on the contracts that you've got. It gives you visibility of what discounts are at risk. It gives you visibility of PO compliance. So all of this stuff that's upstream that's going to have a massive impact on the ability of AP to actually do its job as well as it can. It is based almost within AP, but supports the upstream part of the process. So the platform effect is important, because if you don't have 100% of your invoice volumes going through one place, where do you get the data from? We also provide APIs, by the way, so if you want to suck all the data out of all the visibility stuff that you've seen into some business intelligence tool, that's absolutely fine if you want a console that sits over the top. But for the business, having all of your KPIs in one place and your source of truth in one place is actually quite important. And this just comes out of the box, so it's nice and easy. You also get from a platform, and this relates more to the AP process itself, one streamlined, consistent process and view globally, which we've all wanted a harmonized view that makes life easily. But it also means that your AP staff don't any longer have to know in depth anything about tax. They don't have to know about the ingestion methods, the e-invoicing stuff, what technology they're using. It just gives them everything they in one harmonized view that's much easier. And they're only seeing a small number of exceptions now in any case. I did mention before, when we lost our PowerPoint, that you can consider automation first, process improvement second. I'm going to jump in, Dan. Any comment on that one? Are you comfortable with that? Or as a consultant, does that look like a really bad idea?
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes perfect sense. I think you're getting a lot of data, and you can use that to tune the process as you go. Good
consensus, love it. The other thing about a platform is that if any new features come along, like a new feature for us is for example being able to cross-reference contracts if they're in one place with the invoice terms. We're also doing some work with Dan to provide, an overview of when you implement on, P&L benefits that you can get, money that's been lost. Obviously, the contract analysis does that too, which helps fund the whole project if you want to try and find an easy way to fund these things. Okay, we've had our little bit of visibility. So I'm just going to jump to some customer outcomes, because I think it's important. You may have seen AP automation, and it may be quite difficult to discern one type of automation from another. And really the outcomes that hit the business are the things that really are symptomatic of automation that's working well and automation that doesn't. This is an example. We work quite closely with EY, and this is an example of 4 implementations that they've done with us across a couple of different industries, but they're all global organizations, as you can see here if you look at the footprint. Annual invoice volumes are pretty significant here, so anywhere from 1 million invoices up to 15 million. And I can tell you that at the upper end of this are 70 ERP instances, 80 countries plus. So these are quite complicated implementations, and obviously you start off looking at the efficiencies. They're going to be different in different areas, which is why the benchmarking stuff becomes quite important from a focus of how you get your productivity improvements. Just a very quick thing to note here. If you look at the productivity change over the 3 years that these have been running, pretty much all of the organizations were somewhere between 6,000 and 9,000 invoices per FTE. And I think as a general average, that's kind of where we see the industry. Some people get a little bit higher than that. Some of it depends on what you're matching, whether it's just header or whether you get into proper line level information. But as a principle, we see that kind of about roughly where the organizations we work with start. All of these ones in the space of, actually they got there within 24 months, were around 40 to 45,000 invoices per FTE. So that's the kind of outcome that you get by implementing a platform like this. And obviously you get the visibility on top. And that visibility then allows for continuous improvement. And that continuous improvement means that you improve these numbers as we go forwards. And then by using AI, as we do these days with agentic AI, we can start looking at use cases for the really complicated invoices that take up huge amounts of time. And as we implement those, these numbers get higher and higher. So that gives you a kind of indication of where you sit or where you could sit. And that's really why I wanted to go through the platform, because the visibility I think is really important for the GPOs, but sometimes it needs to be justified against efficiency gains for the business. So just to summarize, I think adopting a dedicated platform for AP automation leads to more effective management of processes. It gets you the operational efficiency you need and ultimately better financial performance. But obviously visibility is a crucial part of that. Otherwise, it's difficult to know where to start. And actually measurement's a crucial part of that as well, because if you're not measuring the changes and the trends, you don't know whether you're improving or not. And benchmarking is important against that as well. So automation is crucial for us to hit the efficiency gains. Nearly all of us in shared services are looking at 5% improvements every year in efficiency while still trying to grow the organization. So automation is the only way that we can go. And I think AP has been quite poorly served with automation over the last 25 years. And I think the innovation that's come with AI and the platform approach over the last 5 years is making a profound difference. Process mining, important to look at where to focus intelligence, and that gives you the insight which drives prioritization on where you want to improve supplier performance, processes within the organization, and it gives you the focus you need, and it's the help that gives you evidence and visibility to win hearts and minds and drive those changes. Now we need upstream visibility and we need downstream visibility, and I hope we've demonstrated why that's important today, but I guess as GPOs you all know that in any case. Okay, I think now we have 10-15 minutes for questions. If anybody has any interesting questions for us, I can have a look through all of our chat at where we're going to go with this. So one of the questions I do have is, it is a question about, do you automate before you actually look at your processes? So we've discussed that a little bit. I'm going to ask you about this, Alex, though. I think we have some customers who have used Springtime and Invoice Track as a strategic partner in order to justify setting up a GBS, in actual fact, and used AP as the first way of focusing on, the really high volume of transactions that we get in order to drive the efficiency goals that you have to because of the cost of setting up these systems. And that's worked extremely well. It gives you a harmonized view across all of your AP departments, but it gives you a focus of attention. Have you got any comments on how you feel about that, Alex?
Definitely. I think that, well, it's quite typical, right? That the first focus is around AP. I think that what the visibility and the solution gives you is that you can start, you chose your location, where you want to start your GBS. And often what happens is that you first try to consolidate from different locations and then put everything in one place. And then you start thinking about your transformation. But what actually works also very well is you try to build the solution based on the team that you have in that location, and you actually then only bring the processes as you expand, as you implement the system in new countries, which means that you don't have to, you hire for the fit because you already understand how much you will automate, what's the potential, where you are, and start getting also those insights into the process so you can build your process. You don't have to adapt the processes. You can just already implement as your golden standards and make sure that you're successful in the journey. So definitely there are different ways that you can do it, but if you want to have quicker outcomes, definitely setting some baseline first and then consolidating the operations is a way to go.
Thanks, Alex. So we've got a couple of questions here. Some of these are nice, good, complicated questions. So the first one, Linda, thank you. Are you measuring the agentic output as labor and doing workforce planning with it? Or does it not rise to the level of shifting work and budgeting the cost of time saved and headcount needed for that function? That is a great question. And particularly as I think agentic output is quite new to all of us. And it tends to be something that sits on top of the kind of core platform of what it is that we do. We do build the measurement of our agentic agents into how much more throughput we get per FTE. So in that sense, we do measure work, but there are some specific ones. I'll give you an example where we also made withholding taxes, which can be quite complicated. And we would probably need, in all honesty, to work with everybody to figure out what the ROI is around that based on how much work goes into that today. We know it's significant, but these things come with a platform in any case. So it's like we do the basic ROI analysis on headcount savings based on efficiency, and then agentic just adds to that. But the kind of things we can do there are, as I said, giving you automation around withholding tax, which is more of a saving on tax than it is so much on efficiency gains. But another example might be taking an attachment like an Excel spreadsheet that's got 1,000 mobile phone numbers on it, and you've got to allocate those to each account based on where the mobile phone user sits. And we use agents to strip all of that out and allocate each of those phones to a different account to make sure that's done automatically. And obviously there's a direct correlation between that work and the amount of time it took before. So we would focus that as a headcount saving as we go forward. Okay, Another question, Zoe, thank you. Are there any plans for insights that compare the actual terms, days, the invoices paid on to the vendor master data PO term, and working capital focus, looking of ways to identify payment terms erosion? Yes, that's right. Nobody wants to hear me talk all the time, so I think I should pass that one on to you.
Yeah, so of course there is the possibility to have also this reported. We have some default rules to take the payment terms from the vendor master data if it's a non-PO related document, and from the purchase order if it's purchase related. But on top, what we do, we extract the payment terms stated from the supplier on the document itself, and then we compare it and also suggest some rules to adapt to have here better payment terms in future.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, just a question coming up, which I want to chuck your way, Dan, if you don't mind. And it's how do people go about putting budgets together around this area? That lots of people have invested in AP automation over the years, although I think a lot of people would say that what they've got now is a little bit legacy and is not achieving the kind of numbers that they would look at. And I know you provide a service that looks at some P&L gains as a way of justifying these kind of projects, Dan. So I thought it'd be good to ask you how you see your customers looking at prioritizing these kind of projects, and also how they would put budgets together to justify them.
That's a great point, Steve. I think the budgeting issue is can get complex, as you say, because most people have already invested in first generation technology, and they had high expectations and probably didn't achieve them all. So I think the productivity benchmark that you've shown, and which is provable, is a powerful way to underpin any kind of business case and budgeting. Because the problem is, you know what it's like, is you say, I've got to invest this amount of money to improve our process by X. And people say, yeah, well, it sounds great, but where's the proof? Where's the evidence? So I think the fact there is evidence behind Invoice Track is very powerful. I think from experience, the biggest kind of leverage point is when organizations are moving from multiple ERPs to, let's say, one instance of S/4HANA, for example. That's a great point where most people are saying, what's going to be our invoice management tool of choice? So I think in terms of timing, that's a key enabler. In terms of budgeting, ultimately you've got to look at what you've got to invest, in total cost of ownership against what you're really going to get. But you've got to have belief. Well, more than belief, you've got to be able to stand behind what you say the improvements are going to be. And historically, that hasn't been very impressive. And I think some of the numbers you've shown and some of the other examples we've discussed are pretty powerful for that.
Yeah, thanks. And we have got to a point now where we're quite happy to stand by those numbers. So we are quite happy having some skin in the game against your efficiency goals. I think we see AP as having been failed as far as automation is concerned for quite a long time around e-invoicing, before mandates, just the invoicing networks. They're a great idea that helped with efficiency, but we didn't get many suppliers participating. Then OCR was quite poor, and then we all outsourced, and that was okay, but also quite poor. And we are happy as an organization committing to the kind of invoices per FTEs that you see here contractually. We believe that suppliers should be able to do that and put their money where their mouth is. So maybe that is the moment or the punchline to leave you with a thought in your head about suppliers committing to your productivity goals, which may be a bit of a surprise into this webinar. But I would like to thank everybody for their attention. We've run over our 45 minutes by a couple of seconds, and just pass over to Bethany to close us out.
Brilliant. Thank you, Steve. I feel as though I say this every webinar I host, but I always have to be the bearer of bad news and cut them short. I feel as though we could carry on talking for quite a while. But as mentioned, guys, any unanswered Q&A questions, I will connect with the team to get some written responses for you guys, as I could see that you were really interested to get as many insights as possible in the 45-minute slot. but unfortunately that is all we have time for. So I firstly would like to say a huge thank you to Steve, Dan, Alex and Jasna for joining us and delivering such a great session, and for everyone that has joined us today and taken the time out of our day to come attend. And as a final reminder, please be sure to check out those resources I mentioned at the beginning of the session. So we do have a copy of the slides for you guys to download, as well as a link to the recent Springtime and SSON report, which is very relevant to today's conversation. And you should see in just a second a post-webinar survey pop up on your screen. We always love to hear your feedback, as well as any follow-up topics you'd be interested in listening to at subsequent webinars. So please do let us know. So that's all from us, guys, and have a lovely day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, everybody.